An Australian film made in the year 2000, Angst, is re-releasing for its 25th anniversary in a restored print. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the writer of Angst, Anthony O'Connor. Anthony, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Hello, thanks very much for having me.
Now, this is such an intriguing film. I really enjoyed it, actually. It's set in Sydney, a group of young people and their romances and so on, and their zeitgeist, if you like, of the year 2000. Tell me about the how you wrote it, how it all came about.
So Angst came about probably around 1995, 1996. And I'd finished high school and I was this kind of, I guess I was like 19, 18 or 19 at the time. And I knew I wanted to be a writer and I knew I wanted to be in a space that was at least genre adjacent, if not specifically genre. And I'd written two pretty awful derivative horror scripts about, just basically my versions of films that I love because, you just kind of, your first films always tend to be derivative and not terribly good. And I'm not sure what made me want to write something more personal and kind of more true to my actual life experience as opposed to just the movies I'd watched. I think the advice, write what you know, had been ringing around in my head or something. So I started writing something that at the time was called Angst for the Memories, which was quasi-autobiographical, sort of set around the place where I lived, which was King's Cross at the time, and involved the kind of adventures and misadventures and sporadically wonderful times that I was experiencing as a young person living in King's Cross. Um, and yeah, so that was the goal. It became to kind of reflect something that I could actually speak about with a bit of authority at the time.
Okay, how interesting to hear all that. So, tell me about getting the production together, finding these very good actors, some of whom, of course, are recognizable, like Abby Tucker and Sam Lewis, Jessica Napier, and Justin Smith, and so on, and director Daniel Nettheim. How did all that come together?
So I actually wrote the original script in a class with a guy called Steve Walland, who himself is a really good writer. And he was really helpful, especially in that what we'd do is we'd write sort of 10 pages a week, and then we'd get the class to kind of read the parts. And so you'd hear it, you'd audibly hear how the dialogue zapped off one another and whether it's working and all that stuff. So I did a whole class with him, and it was great, really helped the script. And then next year he had another class, so I did that one as well. And in that second class, Daniel Nettheim was working on his own screenplay, and he and Steve got talking, and Steve said, "Look, maybe talk to the kid. He seems to be pretty good. He wrote something that might be what you're looking for." So we started chatting. He liked Angst. He said, "Would you like to meet a producer friend of mine, Jonathan Green, with whom I've worked for years now?" And so the three of us kind of worked on the script for a while, slowly sought development funding. We hit a point a couple of years in, I think, where we finally kind of crossed through and people were like, this actually might be something. Um, and yeah, it sort of went from there. Like Daniel was obviously, he's a real actors director. So he was very instrumental in getting such a great cast, and people were just interested. And the more people that come on, the more people come on. So it kind of snowballed in a good way. Um, but yeah, it really did start with just the sort of three of us kind of chipping away at it and seeing what we could do.
Okay. Um, so the writing is so interesting because these young people explore so many issues in their lives, and there's a youngster, a teenager who gets involved, etc. It's a really intricately constructed story. And was that all set while you were filming, or was there some improvisation as you went along?
It was pretty set while we were filming because we were very low budget, and so we had to kind of, keep it. I think there might have been a couple of little moments that were happy accidents, but it was pretty much set in stone. In the writing, however, there was a lot of improvisation. Like the character you alluded to, Mole, the street kid, was always just meant to be a one scene kind of joke character. He comes in, he tries to rob the adult store, and Dean knocks him out. Dean, our lead, knocks him out with a vibrator, and that was meant to be it. And then I remember writing that, and I was like, wouldn't it be interesting if we actually stuck with this kid and we kept the kid around? And what if they felt the need that they had to look after him because they sort of attacked him and whatnot? So yeah, I think a lot of that happened on the way to the shoot, but once the cameras were bought and the film stock was loaded up, there was not a lot of improvisation.
Uh-huh. Okay. It's a real time capsule of the year 2000 and the various references that are made within the script about what was going on at the time and about life and what it's like for romance to occur, etc. I just found it such an interesting approach to that time period, if you like to put it that way.
Oh, thank you. That was completely accidental. I would love to say that, we knew that 25 years later this would be an amazing time capsule. We were just observing society as it was. And the thing is, society doesn't consistently change. I mean, it does, but it happens in fits and starts. And I think right at the bridge between the late 90s and the early 2000s, there was huge social change, technological change, just the cultural zeitgeist of society in general went through a real upheaval. And so Angst was kind of right on the cusp of that. There's lines where Dean talks about mockingly about, using a computer to organize your sex life, which is now, I would say, the norm, is ubiquitous. And the technology as well. I mean, video shops. This was the end of the 90s, early 2000s was the end of the era for the video shops, which was unimaginable for me. And even the release of Angst never got a DVD release at the time because various companies imploded. But also, I remember thinking, that DVD was probably a flash in the pan and VHS would be around forever. Nostradamus, I ain't. But yeah, it was a real shift. It was a real changeover, and I think we captured that possibly without meaning to, and a bit of a happy accident.
Okay, how interesting. Now, how much were you involved in the actual shooting of the film, in the locations in King's Cross, and so on?
Well, I lived in King's Cross, and I had for years. So pretty much, I was around for most of the King's Cross shoots. I also played Toaster Junkie, the guy that sells the
Yes.
toaster who you see in a few scenes.
Yep.
So I was actually working then. But the rest of the time, I mean, look, I hung around when I wasn't annoying, and when there were, it was too difficult, I didn't. It was wonderful to see, but also you don't want the writer on set all the time, because it's no longer the writer's film to a degree. Like the journey of a writer is a weird one because it's kind of like it. I mean, this is such a stereotypical way of talking about it, but it is kind of like raising a child and putting them out in the world, and you do need to let go. So I came when I could, and I came when I wouldn't be a distraction or an annoyance, and I came when I was playing Toaster Junkie. But I wasn't this kind of instrumental, linchpin of the set. It was just great to watch. It was a crazy shoot too, because I mean we were shooting King's Cross in 1999, which is when we shot. It was absolutely out of its mind. We had to hire a gangster to walk ahead of us when we were doing the exterior kind of walk and talks, and he would kind of nod to the other gangsters, I guess, or the folks on the street, don't hassle these guys, and they didn't. So he was effective. But that was the kind of place it was. Like you were offered sex, drugs, and violence, sometimes all three, at every kind of few steps. So it was quite an interesting shoot, quite a time to capture.
I can imagine it would have been. And I mean, the cinematographer Tristan Milani, he did a great job of capturing the way King's Cross looked and the whole atmosphere, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Mm.
Um,
Tristan's an absolute genius, and he did so well. To capture the place so vividly, it does remind me of those films that I love from like sort of the early 70s or even early 80s that captured New York and Times Square at its kind of grimiest and seediest, and it's so vivid, like Taxi Driver. You can almost smell the city in that film, and I kind of like it's there's a bit of that to it, just a real sense of place, and I think he captured it beautifully.
It certainly did. And tell me about the music that's used. How much were you involved in what sort of music was in the film?
That I was involved a lot in because I mean, I still am, but at the time I was sort of a young person who liked a lot of music. Originally, excuse me, originally it was going to be much more American and UK artists, like a lot of kind of industrial electronica and that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking it's weird that this Australian film set in a very specific space in Australia would have completely overseas music. So we kind of pivoted and went, what if we got Aussie artists? Now, I was a huge fan of the band Snog by David Thrussell, who also does Black Lung and Soma. Soma with Peter Burke from Dead Can Dance. Amazing music, like otherworldly, ethereal, fantastic music. And so we approached him to do the score, and he was keen, so we got on. And I think he really responded to the film references, and you can even see the name of the soundtrack, which I believe is up on Spotify and a few other places at the moment. It's kind of Night of the Living Latte, and it's all kind of horror title themed tracks. That's kind of the aesthetic. That's kind of the vibe. And then we got a bunch of other sort of Aussie electronica groups. And then, we got Panau, we got Simon Day. And then we had Abby Tucker herself, who contributed two fantastic songs to the soundtrack. So it really was a labor of love. We adored putting that soundtrack together. It is still, you can still grab it from eBay and whatnot. My partner actually grabbed a copy the other week. I think she's, curious about the concept of CDs being a thing as they were then. But the idea was this is the music that these people travel their lives listening to. This is the soundtrack to their lives, and therefore it's the soundtrack to the film. It's actually one of my favorite aspects of the film, and I think it's aged quite well. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, obviously, but yeah, that was the idea.
Okay, okay, works well, very good. I noticed in the credits there was, it said added dialogue Tony McNamara. Can you talk about that?
I mean, I think there's probably just a bit of ADR in the background of people talking and whatnot. Tony was a good friend of Daniel's, and he kind of, I think he even plays a small role. I could be getting that wrong, but he might be a background extra or something like that. So I think that's what that is.
Okay,
But I mean,
cool.
he's gone on to do great stuff. So
Yeah. It's
so it's a lot of people, by the way. A lot of the cast and crew went on to spectacular careers, which was fantastic to see.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a really good cast and crew overall, and it was interesting to see some other performers in there, like Tim Campbell, who obviously went on to do other things and so on. So it was a really good cast overall.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were very pleased with how that all turned out. And it was great to see people kind of move on to bigger and better things, and have that as the kind of springboard, which they often find that way with a lot of Australian films. I mean, Two Hands sort of came out at a similar time, and that launched both Rose Byrne and Heath Ledger, and yeah, so Aussie film is very good at finding talent, I think.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it was so interesting to see the theme about young people navigating their way of in their life and finding romance or whatever. It reminded me a little bit around the same time in Melbourne. There was a film called Love and Other Catastrophes, which you may be
Yeah, yeah.
aware of. And I thought how interesting to see these themes being somewhat replicated across different cities in filmmaking.
I think it's universal, isn't it? That sense of kind of longing and for connection and understanding when you're young. When you first step out as a kind of new person, you're no longer a child, you're no longer even a teenager in most cases, and you're now expected to navigate the world as an adult and understand all these things. And you realize in those moments how little you understand and how big and scary and lived in society and the world in general is. And those are the moments that I think unite a lot of people of that age. And I do think it's universal too, because we had a screening at the Inner West Film Festival here in Sydney of Angst. from the 35 millimeter print. And the producer, Jonathan Green, brought his kids who were right at that age, I think ranging from like 18 to 22 or something like that. And they were talking about how relatable it was, which is definitely not anything we expected. Like, I mean, when I wrote it very much of the time because it was the late 90s and that was what I knew and that is where I was. But I think those themes of connection and trying to find your place are evergreen, which is why we see them come up again and again and again.
Yeah, yeah. How interesting to hear all that. And apart from the seeing the video store and so on, which no longer exists, and the monorail, which is gone
Oh yeah,
in
yeah.
Sydney, it is such a good snapshot. And I must commend the casting of the cat, Cronenberg.
The woman came on set and I said hi because I was on set for that day in the couple of scenes where the cat does its action. And we had a cat wrangler on set, and I got to chat with the cat wrangler, and she was great because I thought, what God, what a dream job! You just kind of look after your cat. And I think it was wonderful. But no, great cat, very chill. Not at all like most cats, and I guess that's the point. You need to find cats that are going to just be relaxed around lots of sound and noise and hot lights. So she did a great job.
Yes. Oh, well cast. And and tell me about using the title Angst, which of course is German for fear. Why that title?
That is probably a side effect of me being a bit pretentious and thinking having unusual titles was funny. In retrospect, it probably wasn't the best idea. I mean, as I said before, it started off as Angst for the Memories, which was kind of like a play on words and a
Mm.
pun, I guess, which was not a great title. And we shortened it to Angst, and we did back and forth about it for a while. I think if I had it all over again, I think we probably would have called it Video Boy. But the problem was, at the same time, Mall Boy had come out recently, and Something Else Boy, maybe Wog Boy, I don't know, one of those kind of films. And we didn't want to be just yet another kind of noun boy film. Um, but I knew it was not maybe the ideal title when I ran it through the taxi driver test, which is back when we took taxis. They'd say, "What do you do?" "I'm a writer." "What have you written?" "I've got a movie coming out called Angst." And 9 times out of 10, you'd get kind of a blank look of confusion. And the 10th time, you'd get people thinking it was like a scary movie or a horror film. So I think the lesson there, kids, is don't put too much irony in your titles. And interestingly, the other Angst from 1983, the I think Austrian film, actually got a re-release this year too. So I hope no one confuses the two because that film is very spicy. It would make for an interesting double bill though. I think if you could do them both, maybe start off light and then soul wrenching existential horror.
Double your angst. I like it. It's
Double your Angst, yeah.
sounds great. Now, tell me about the restoration. How did all that come about?
So as I said, we had the screening in 2024 at the Inner West Film Fest. Jonathan, the producer, basically has had the 35 millimeter prints in his office for 25 years. And we, over the years, have talked about maybe dusting them off, maybe making it happen, but we kind of ummed and ahed, and I don't know. I don't think we thought there'd be much appetite for it. It was a film that did really well on video. Like it sort of disappeared from the cinema fairly quickly, but it did really well on video. But then various companies imploded before DVD release, and so it kind of was lost to the sands of time. So I don't think he was particularly convinced this would make much of an impact. Then Dov Kornitz, who's the publisher of Film Inc., been around for ages. God, since the mid '90s, I think. Because I remember I work for Film Inc. I do reviews for them sometimes, and I have been doing that since about the same time Angst came out. Um, anyway, he's like, "I'd like to put Angst on. I think it'd be a good film to show to an audience." And we were like, "Hey, man, fill your boots." So we screened the 35 millimeter print, really full screening. Jonathan was there, Daniel was there, I was there, obviously, and a few other people from the film, and it went really well. It really better than I remember it going, to be honest. Like it really hit with an audience. They laughed in the right places. They were, sad in the right places. And we just got thinking like maybe this could be, maybe audiences would still appreciate this kind of film. Combine that with over the years, every time I go to like an event or often a party, people will ask me, when's Angst getting a proper release? When can I see it? How can I see it? Because the only way you could see it is if you were one of the many people who stole a copy on VHS in the early 2000s, or if you, made a copy and burned it onto a DVD, which a lot of people did. So yeah, the decision was kind of made. Let's give this a go. So we did the remaster, the telecine, I think is the correct term. And it's gorgeous. I mean, it's better looking now than it ever has been. It's as good looking now as it was if you saw it in the cinema 25 years ago, or if you happened to be at the Inner West Film Fest last year. So it's very exciting to be able to show people, because that was one thing that really struck us, was this is a beautiful film. I think we'd all forgotten. It's funny how your mind just deletes things that you once knew, because I think it's always been a beautiful film, but I think over time you just forget and move on. I mean, it's quarter century. So yeah, it's a really grand thing to have this looking as good as it does, available for people on digital and DVD with a Blu-ray to follow shortly. So yeah, hopefully it finds a place in people's hearts and DVD shelves.
Well, hopefully, because I think it deserves to. And um, I just was interested to know when the film was initially released in 2000. As you mentioned, it had a brief cinema release. What were the reactions and reviews like for the film at the time?
Mostly good. David Stratton gave us a 4 out of 5, which was very exciting, and he loved it. And he talked about it being like a French kind of relationship film,
Mm.
which Daniel, who was a huge French film guy, absolutely adored that comment. The one I liked was Megan Spencer. Megan Spencer from Triple J at the time said it was that had such a specificity of pop culture references and being that kind of nerd that it felt very true to life. And I was always very happy with that. Not everyone liked it. Margaret Pomerantz, on the other hand, didn't. And we got some negative reviews for sure. But I think overall it was pretty positive. It came out against Scary Movie, which at the time was the biggest film at the box office. And yeah, I think like a lot of Australian films at the time, and a lot of Australian films in general, let's be real, it just sort of came out, and people who saw it mostly liked it, but not that many people saw it, I guess, is how it went.
Well, it's certainly time for a reevaluation, so it deserves
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. 25 years later feels like the right time. Absolutely.
It does. Look, well done. And Anthony, I must ask you, what did you go on to write after Angst? What other films were you involved with?
So I did a lot because of the dialogue kind of factor. I did a lot of dialogue for various films, credited and uncredited. For many, I mean, I still do, but I did it a lot more back then. I got to work with Alex Proyas and Michael Reimer. Actually, Alex Proyas called me into his office back at Mystery Clock in Paddington one day, and I thought he was going to kick my ass because I made fun of the crow in the film. But he was just really nice. He said, "I really like the script. I don't have any work for you right now, but I'd like to see you in the future, kid." And he did. We worked together on a few things. Unfortunately, a feature we wrote, it didn't get up. But yeah, it was a lot of that kind of stuff. And then in 2012, I wrote with Jonathan Green a film called Red Ink, which is like a horror film. I finally got to do my pure horror film, which starred Nicholas Hope as the bad guy from Bad Boy Bubby, Kelly Pataniti, and Alan Dukes, a bunch of great people. Tom Savini, the great Tom Savini of Dawn of the Dead and Friday the 13th fame, supervised the special makeup effects with the MEG group in Sydney. So it's a gory, funny kind of splattery experience, which was a great deal of fun. And that stage, the market was actually set up so that it did manage to do a small cinema release in various places, including Japan. But the infrastructure for things like DVD and Blu-ray was much more established then. So that was seen by a lot more people and got to go around the world and all that kind of stuff much more successfully. Since then, I'm currently working on an adaptation of my first novel, Straya, with director Kriv Stenders
Ah,
of Red Dog and Correspondent fame. We're doing an animated movie. That's still in the very early stages, but that's pretty exciting. And I'm actually working on something new with Daniel Nettheim and Jonathan Green. That is not a sequel to Angst or anything, but it's the same team, and it does deal with some similar themes, except no longer young people, now sort of middle-aged people. So yeah, I think that brings us up to the present.
oh, very good. I look forward to seeing those productions. Should be really interesting. And just a last question, Anthony. I just wanted to ask you: have you seen any films of late, especially in terms of writing, that have impressed you?
Oh God. Um, I really love the substance, but I don't think it was the writing that did it for me, to be honest. I think the substance actually succeeds because of its vibe and mood. Although I did like it a lot. Weapons, the film Weapons by Zach Kreger, I think I hope I'm getting that name right. Sorry, Zach. Was fantastic. That was probably my favorite film of this year. Just it kind of did that shifting, splintered narrative, Rashomon, different perspectives, a la Pulp Fiction and films like that. I also liked, or mostly liked, One Battle After Another. I thought it whiffed the ending a little bit, but I think in terms of intricate plotting and just pure cinema, it was hard to beat the experience of just existing through that film. So many films now feel like television on the big screen, or completely artificial CGI kind of things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when you see something that is just pure cinema, made, on film and shot with kind of just on real sets and that kind of stuff, there is a kind of pleasing sense of old school about it that I really enjoy. But no, look, God, we could talk all day. There are so many great films that I've seen recently. We've been eating good this year.
Good to hear all that. We've been speaking to Anthony O'Connor, the writer for Angst, now in its 25th anniversary re-release on digital platforms, and definitely check it out. Let's have a look at Angst and see what you think. And we've been speaking to Anthony. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you very much, sir. You have a good one.
All the best. Bye bye.
Cheers, mate.